Despite my current attire, I'm actually not a dress watch guy. You know what? Hold on. Okay, I think that's a little bit better now. Taking a look at the watches within my collection, you would see a very heavy theme of steel sports watches. I like watches to be waterproof, typically made of stainless steel, any material that's bashable, and I just want a watch that can come with me and never have to really leave my wrist. But now having some time with this watch I'm about to show you guys, I may get into dress watches now. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Caden. I'm a fellow watch nerd, and on this channel, I like to document my watch collecting journey. If you're curious in checking out and following along with me as I learn about this crazy watch world, feel free to subscribe, I'd appreciate it. To give a little bit of context to this watch that we're about to take a look at, Baltic was founded in 2016, and the founder started this watch company because of his interest in his grandfather's watch collection. A lot of Baltic's watches are vintage styled watches with modern specifications. They typically will use a Chinese movement, they're assembled in France, and some of their accessories are made in Italy. But let's get into this specific Baltic. Here in front of me is the Baltic MR Classic with a salmon dial. This watch has a 36mm case and a 44mm lug to lug, making it extremely wearable on small to medium sized wrists. If you're a larger individual, I could see you enjoying this watch if you like small in proportion to larger wrist watches. Because of this movement, which we're going to come to later, this watch has a 9.9mm thin case. This watch features a very strap-friendly 20mm lug to lug, and being that it is a dress watch, it has 30 meters of water resistance and a Hesalite crystal. From Baltic, they give you many bracelet and strap options, but the one that I wanted to feature on this video is the Beads of Rice bracelet and a black leather strap. Having spent some time now with this watch, there are some things that I like and there are a couple things that I don't like. But of all the things that are my favorite, I have to say it is the design and the styling of this watch. Taking a look at the front of this watch, it has a copper salmon colored dial with some texture in the middle, kind of a grainy texture. The only text on the dial is the word Baltic. The indices are applied and they do have a Breguet style typeface to them. They're polished and I think they really stand out against the dial, and in proportion to the dial, they just look awesome. At 7:30, you will find a sub-seconds hand with a circular texture along the entire sub-dial. It kind of has a railroad style minute track going around the chapter ring, marking the numbers every 5 minutes. The dial color and the texture and the layout and just the whole face of this watch, I think look awesome. Typically, when it comes to watches, I personally tend to look at the movement before I look at the design aspects. But getting hands-on with this watch, I kind of had an open mind when looking at it, and the design really spoke to me. I just think it looks, frankly, very clean and very simple. In contrast to the rest of the watches within my collection, this has its own little spot as something interesting that I found with getting hands-on with it, and that is just a simple casual piece. I think the bracelet on this watch looks super, super cool. Call me crazy, but I think having a bracelet on a dress watch is a little bit maybe wrong, maybe I'm just a little crazy, but this kind of changed my mind, and I actually like how dressy it looks on a bracelet, and the straps that Baltic provide are actually really high quality. I love it on a strap, I love it on a bracelet, and on my 6.5-inch wrist, I just think this watch wears so well for a dress watch. Diving into the movement, this watch features the Hangzhou, and I may be pronouncing that wrong, Cal 5000A, which gives you 42 hours of power reserve. But the main biggest feature about this movement is that micro rotor. If you want a micro rotor from a Swiss-made company, you're likely going to be spending somewhere in the ballpark of 5 figures. But here, Baltic gives it to you for under $1,000. Just at a glance, this entire movement is honestly finished to a very high standard, and I probably spent a solid 3 to 5 minutes when I first opened this watch just looking at all the movement and the features that it has. When I was actually filming these macro shots, I was actually spending so much time trying to get all the intricate details of the back of the movement that when I was going through the footage, I was kind of like, oh, I need to chill. When you put this watch on your wrist, I think it looks really clean with jeans and a t-shirt and just casual attire. Something that I found with wearing this watch is that juxtaposition between casual attire and a more dressy, fancy watch is actually something that I'm kind of, like, frankly, digging. Who the hell says digging? I have mentioned that I am a bit of a movement nerd, and typically when I'm looking at a watch, if the design stands out to me, that's what kind of gets my attention to go and look at a piece. But if the movement does not have specs that support what I typically like, then I usually become disinterested in that watch. One of the things that I learned about this watch is it has a non-hacking movement. So when you go to set this watch and wear it, you don't get to choose when the seconds hand stops. You kind of just have to set the time as kind of close as you can to the time and then go about your day. And typically that would actually drive me kind of crazy. But I have found with this watch occupying a different space within my collection, that actually didn't really bother me that much. I could see myself having this watch as just a casual weekend watch where I just kind of casually set the time, throw it on my wrist, and I go about doing whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm obviously not going to be climbing mountains in this watch, but maybe that's kind of the point. Kind of reflecting back and like thinking about if I were to add this watch to my collection, what would it occupy? Maybe it's just a chill Sunday and I want to wear a watch, but I'm not really checking the time. This would be a great watch for that. The other gripe that I did find with this watch is that the crown is a little bit uncomfortable when you're manually winding it. The teeth are just really small and sharp, and there's not a lot of surface area for you when you're winding it. And so I found it to be rather uncomfortable when I'm winding the watch. That 30-meter water resistance is not enough that I ideally like to see, but kind of going back to the hacking, I think that's something that I could overlook with this watch, just because of the specific use case that this watch would occupy in a collection. The one gripe that I actually am not a fan of on this is the Hesalite crystal. I think that it gives it a cool character, adding that Hesalite dome to the watch. It certainly makes it feel a little bit more vintage styled, but when I was messing with the macro camera, I could already start to see some scratches on the Hesalite crystal, and taking just one look at my Tudor Black Bay would tell you that scratches and watches just go hand in hand for me. And so even on days when I'm not really doing that much, my watches still tend to get a little bit of ding and some wear and tear. And so if this watch was in my collection, I do feel that I would have to treat it a little bit better in order to not scratch that crystal. And who knows what I'm about to say next. Yes, you can poly watch and buff out the crystal, which is a pro about having a Hesalite crystal. So kind of problem solved. But overall, after spending some time with this watch, I've kind of found, funny enough, that the things that I didn't like about this watch were just the aspects that don't make this watch a sports watch. The water resistance, some of the specs. But long story short, I could absolutely see myself enjoying this watch because it would occupy a very interesting space within my collection. Something dressy and casual, which is just something I don't really have. I very much enjoyed my time with this watch, and maybe I'm gonna have to consider adding this to my collection. When I look at the clips of me wearing it on my wrist, I honestly just kind of fall in love with it a little bit. It would be a very interesting watch. But anyway, tell me your thoughts on this watch in the comments below. Do you have this watch? Have you ever had any experience with this watch? Would you consider adding it to your collection? I'm interested to know what you guys think. But as always, that's a wrap on everything I gotta tell you. Enjoy this new ending screen. We're gonna be trying it out. And you guys already know the routine. What is today's gift gonna be for sticking to the end? You know what? You guys are gonna get a C major 7th chord. Goodbye.